Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another amazing episode of Let's Talk 1943. This is the Business Spotlight edition. And as you see, we have a beautiful special guest today. And we'll definitely talk to Anna Marie in a second. We just want to get back and we'll go ahead and we'll be ready to do what? Let's talk. We are back. We are so back. So let me go ahead and introduce Anna Marie DiDio. All
Yes.
right. And she is going to, we're going to be speaking about adoption. She's an adopted parent, and we're going to get into the conversation of all facets of adoption on their side. Because as my audience know, I am an adopted child. So it's great to be able to get the other side of this story of being an adopted parent. And you had did an international adoption as well, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So we're going to definitely just dive on into that. So welcome to Let's Talk 1943.
Thank
I'm
you so
glad
much.
you're here. So let's go ahead and just go in. So being an adopted parent, how is that? Just give me like where it started from. When did you decided to be an adopted parent?
Mm-hmm. Well, it began as many adoption journeys begin with infertility.
Hmm.
So when I was married the first time, I had infertility issues and had a miscarriage. And then just, that was really the beginning of the end of the marriage. So when I remarried, I knew that I still had infertility issues.
Hmm.
And after a few years of various interventions, nothing was working. So we began the adoption process, and then I had a child.
Okay.
So that's I've heard, oh, that happens so frequently. But then
Mhm.
adding to our family was just impossible. So by that point, I was a little bit older, and some of the infertility issues led to other issues, and it was not possible to have another child. So we began to look into adoption, and
Mhm.
the process just took so many years.
Mhm.
That when we thought the time for an infant had really passed us by. So we began to look into opportunities to adopt an older child, and that led us to this international situation, which was sort of happenstance. I just saw an article about this particular agency
Mhm.
or organization,
Mhm.
and that worked in Mexico, and that's where we ended up adopting our daughter at almost 7 years old from Mexico.
Oh, see, okay, so let's go back because I have a couple of questions. And like I said, for me to be an interviewer and being an adopted child, like I am like so ready to pick your brain. So when you said your first marriage and it started, you said, and it ended because of this?
Well, I think when there are issues in the marriage, and then on top of that, you're faced with infertility. I mean, that's a huge
Okay.
um, problem for a marriage to kind of, and it was unexpected. You kind of think, oh, it's time to have a child. It's time to start
Mhm.
our family.
Mhm.
And most of my friends were getting pregnant without even trying. And then we became aware of issues that we had to take care of through surgery, and then my ex decided that was not, we just decided it was not something that we were going to stay together for. And
Mhm.
then when I got married, I knew that those things, I was anxious to start a family. So I continued with some of the infertility treatments that had been started.
Mhm.
But then, and unexpectedly, we did get pregnant, and we had a baby girl. But then when we began to think to add to that, that it just was not going to work. And I had another two miscarriage events.
And that happens a lot. I actually had two miscarriages as well. Um, I am an adopted child, but when I got married and we started to work on a family, I had two back to back miscarriages, and I found out what my issue was. And we went to a specialist and got it fixed. and I was able to have my twins that I have. Yeah, they'll be 18 next week. So
Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. So and you were saying a part of your story is that's one of the major reasons why people look into adoption is because they have issues on carrying their own child. And that is, I think, the gist of adoption. Some people adopt because they just want to adopt. They don't want to
Right.
go through the
Right.
pregnancy part. They don't want to
Right.
go through their body issue. They just want to have a child. And then some people just wanted to add on to their family, and they feel there's so many children out here that need homes.
Correct.
So many children
You're
that need
so
homes.
right. You're so right. Yep.
It's like, I don't need to. I could just go here because they. And another thing you mentioned that is real, real important is older adoptions. When you said that, that kind of, ooh, because a lot of people want that baby. They
Oh,
want
so
to
true.
feel like it came right through them. Like it was like, oh, I had a newborn. It's just like I had my own. Like it's something about a stigma about adoption that they feel like they have to have it from the beginning to feel more like a parent than having it when it's older. Like they do dogs that animals. Everybody want the puppies and the older
Right. Right.
animals stay there
Right.
forever, right?
Right. There's so many, as you said, there are so many children out there. And think of our daughter. By that time, she was 6, 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So we really felt an infant. Maybe she would have preferred an infant, but we were looking for, a peer to her.
Right.
And so by the time you do the paperwork, so she was almost 8, and they're only 1 year apart. Our adopted daughter
Oh,
was
good.
almost 7. Yeah, when we adopted.
That's
So
beautiful,
they
and
were
she
close.
enjoy that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. They going through the same things at the same time. You
Right.
have someone to talk to about it. So I give you kudos on that because a lot of people don't look at older children. Sometimes they think that they are going to be more headache because they already have their ways. They already been through traumas, and they don't want to take the headache on. So thank you for looking into an older adoption. That's really beautiful.
But you're right about the trauma. I mean, all adoption begins with the trauma, the trauma of
Hmm.
separation and loss, whether it's as an infant or
Hmm.
as an older child. But then the older child, as we found, she came with so many memories, memories and feelings about everything. I mean, caregivers and her food and the culture and the language. So I began to just see all of this unfold right before my eyes. And I
Hmm.
started to put together a journal. And the first thing I wrote was really a memoir about the whole experience,
Hmm.
from actually my getting married a second time and then starting this family. So the memoir encompasses about 15 years total. And but then as the years progressed, I saw so many things that were just, I thought, just not being addressed in children's books. And now I've begun, as you know, to write children's books
Hmm.
with the message of, you know, trauma and loss and getting acclimated to a family.
That is, oh my goodness. I wish I had that because I had actually went through a lot this of my life. Just the last 3 years, really just
Mm.
decided to embrace my adoption. So I kept it a secret. I didn't tell no
Oh,
one
wow.
in my family. And when I decided to do it on my 50th birthday, I decided to let the world know I was adopted. And
Wow.
it opened up my world because now I don't have that on me. I don't have that as, you
It's
know, it just, it was a
it's
taboo.
great. And that's really the focus of my second book is about what's called or referred to as disenfranchised grief. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard that term, but
No,
it's grief that's often ignored or minimized by society. So and this older adopted child is, and the children's books are not about my daughter because she would kill me if I wrote any more about her. So I had to shift gears a little bit. So this is all the events in the children's books, and I've written 2 so far. It's going to be a
mhm,
series. Are really true events that happened to our family, but I've sort of repositioned them. So
mhm,
so anyway, the book is entitled "How I Wonder Where You Are," and
mhm,
the girl, her name is Carla, adopted internationally from Colombia, and
mhm,
she's wondering about her birth parents because and you may have heard this, triggering events for adoptees can be putting together a family tree or having some other culture assignment at school or an adoptee's birthday. So it's
Mhm.
natural to think, who am I? Where did I come from? Who do I
Mhm.
look like?
Mhm.
And these are things that my daughter and the child in this book, they don't get to experience that. The people say to her sister, our biological child, oh, you look like your mother. And that's not something that anyone's ever going to say to my daughter. And
Wow.
and so that's what I process a little bit in this book, just opening up the conversation. My mission is really to open up the conversation between parents and children about this wondering and the identification of self and how that happens.
Having your birth given right to know where you came from is
Mm-hmm.
so important. When you said about your daughter and your daughters and the only reason why I do it this way, because we can understand who we're talking about, because I usually don't do this because I feel that you adopted your child, that's your child. We don't have to say
Yes.
biological
Right,
and
right. But for this purposes, we're talking about the
yeah, I
right.
have to do it. So your biological child and how everybody say you look like it looks, and then your adopted daughter doesn't, of course, because she's a different nationality. It really affects, because I have a cousin. She's like my best cousin. She looks just like my mother, just like my mother. She looks more like my mother than her own mother, and they're sisters.
Wow.
So when we used to go places and stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, she looked just like you. She looked just like you. I heard that all my life. And she would have to correct them and say, no, that's not my daughter. That's my niece. She's my daughter. So I know exactly
Yes.
how your daughter feels when people make, and there's nothing wrong with it because it's just
No, no.
natural.
It's a
Hey,
natural thing. People say it and they mean well, and that's just the thing. It's just that's why this disenfranchised grief is no one's going to say, oh, the phrase I use is, a loving family
mm-hmm,
doesn't erase the pain of the family that's unknown.
mm-hmm,
So you're really trying to just reconcile all that in your mind, and that's
mm-hmm.
again my mission and purpose of these books is just to have parents recognize that and not minimize it and not say, oh,
Yes.
or people used to say to me, oh, she's so
Mm.
lucky to be adopted by you.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
and I hated that phrase because yes, I was so grateful for the family that we had, but I could just, there were many, many, many times I would look at her and just see her pain at,
Mm.
learning English. That was a huge thing. Getting used to eating Italian food. She wanted,
Well, I
she,
love it. So.
it was so funny. I mean, in the beginning, I mean, that was part of her culture. And this is in another book I have, the first book, Many People to Love. Part of her acclimating is about food, and she spits out the food. And our little girl from Mexico used to spit out her food. And I think it was just, this isn't my food. And it was,
Like
there's
it's
all
like
it
rebellion.
was so natural. And so I want to prepare adoptive parents and again open up the conversation, and just this is all part of the process.
And that's what adopted parents need to understand. You are really, oh my goodness, this is a blessing. What adopted parents really need to understand is when you adopt a child, yes, people always say they're lucky to have you because they will have been on the street, or they'll been unloved, or they'll be in the orphanage, wherever they feel that the child's going to be.
Right, right.
But you're a blessing to them just like they're a blessing to you, because they're fulfilling something in you that you want to be
Exactly.
a mother. So it's not just, oh yeah, they just be glad, especially when it's international. They really think that you was a
Right,
savior and you
right.
was,
The savior, right. All this
you know
savior nonsense. Right,
you was the
right.
Messiah. You saved this girl from, whatever, because we have these stereotypes in our head how their lives are in different places, right? Because media kind of tells you, oh, look at where, that, especially Mexico now, all this craziness going on there with the border.
Right, right.
That, oh, you saving their lives. Like, no, she saved my life. We
but
saved
but
other lives. It's
right,
like,
but this took years for me to understand, and that's why I would collect newspaper clippings. This is part of my memoir. I would collect
Mhm.
newspaper clippings and all this evidence that see all this, the great family you have now. And because she was so unhappy for years,
Mhm.
and eventually I was saving that for her to look at, and I just threw it all out because I wasn't gonna. I was just realizing and seeing her pain, and
Mhm.
kind of just giving her more room to be in pain and adjust. I mean, it's a long process, and it's not
Mhm.
some adoption's not some magical, formula. Often referred to as the myth of adoption, but again, so the point of the books are really to just have another look at this, and expect this.
I can't wait to read. I'm gonna definitely get it because you're really adoption is great for both sides. But like you said, you can't minimize what adopted children go through. We appreciate you. We appreciate the parents who came and adopted us. Oh, we so appreciate you. But nobody,
Right,
after they adopted, that's it. They okay, you got me, I got you. We happy. Let's just move on. And it's like, yeah, I'm happy, but there's things in me that you can't even help me with
right,
because you're not an adopted child. You don't know how it feels not to know where you came from, and it's always tugging on you. It's always tapping on you. It's always
right,
tapping on you, even though you're happy. And I think sometimes the adopted parents don't know how to distinguish the difference of I am happy here. Yes, I am. I'm glad that you're my family, but yet this is still a void here that I need to fulfill, and and you need
right,
to acknowledge it. You need to
right,
acknowledge this. And then you may don't know how to understand. You may not know how to explain it to me, but just acknowledge it that it's here. And I'm glad. I'm so happy that you're addressing this in your books because it is a whole nother side of adoption. People just think you just supposed to just be happy that somebody took you in.
right, right. It's not. Well, first of all, it's not that simple, and secondly, and this issue of the primal wound. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
No.
it's the trauma as described as the biological separation of the birth mother and the child. So
Oh.
even when a child is adopted as an infant, this primal wound exists that kind of manifests later in life as intense sorrow and questioning, and the wondering that I talked about, and just uncertainty about where did I
Oh,
come from.
yeah. I know because I had to go to counseling. I had abandonment issues, low self-esteem, codependency. I had to get everyone to like me, people pleasing. I had all of this stem from my adoption that I didn't even know it was there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
So
didn't
that
know
the
it was
latent primal wound, and this is a Nancy Verrier is the psychologist that kind of did research on this. And when
Mhm.
I found that book several years after we adopted my daughter, and it was just like the world just opened up. And when I realized a lot of what was happening was just as she has experienced in her research and thousands of other parent-child relationships, adoptive parent-child relationships. I felt that I wasn't, I knew I wasn't crazy. So I was very glad to read that. But again, as the years have passed, and I just began to look at children's books, and the messages, and they're all great messages. Sometimes
Mhm.
the kids' books, they adopt like little chickens or rabbits or something, and that's really. But my book, I wanted it to be all realistic
Mhm.
illustrations about people
Mhm.
and um, and issues. And again, the second book is the triggering event is this family tree that the girl has to put together. And at one point in the book, she says, I feel like it's a pretend family because I don't really know these people. So anyway, so she meets them over Zoom and puts together the tree. But yeah, yes, you'll have to read it.
My
And
God, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait because just when I was suppressing and not talking about it,
Mhm.
I had to once a year or every couple of years when I go to the doctor about certain things, they'll ask you, well, do your family has a history of this, a history of
That's
that?
another issue, right?
I have to actually tell them, and it used to like cringe, like it, because I didn't talk about it. So when I had to go, well, I'm adopted, so I don't know. They're like, oh, okay, And I'm just like, oh, I hated to tell them that I was adopted because it seemed like they looked at you like, oh, okay, I understand. Like, like, oh, so I'm so sorry you don't know your medical history. That's
And
why.
that's another, another check, that's an issue. Do you ever think? I never think going to the doctor. Yeah, I'm this, I'm that. But for an adopted, my daughter faces the same thing, and it comes up in school. The school nurse, well, have you had this, or do you? She didn't know.
I don't know.
So anyway, it's nice to. I'm glad you've made you're still in your journey, or you've made strides in your journey. So that's
Yes,
wonderful.
yes. I have met my birth family 2 years ago when I decided to dig in on my issues, and it stemmed from the core of my adoption. And then I decided I needed to face that. I needed to face that monster that's been
Mm,
pulling me back, who's been uh, uh, in control of my life, because I
mhm,
became these other things because of that. So when I decided to do that, it just opened up the doors, opened up everything for me, and
wonderful.
it's overwhelming. Like
Mm,
it's on TV you see it when they meet their birth family, everybody's
mhm.
happy, crying, then the credits roll up the screen, and then they go away.
Right, right,
Now you got to learn these people.
right.
Now you got to learn hundreds of personalities, cousins and aunts and your relatives. I mean, it's overwhelming sometimes because they just got to learn you, but you got to learn hundreds of
Yes, it's over. Totally overwhelming. Right.
it is, and then you're just told to say, jump in the circle. That's your mom. That's your dad. That's your sister. And instantly, you're supposed to think, I'm supposed to love these people. I'm supposed to respect these people. I'm supposed
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
let's dive into their families right at this spot because they're my sister. I'm supposed to know them. And you got to start from scratch.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, we've kept in touch with my daughter's caregiver and some of the people at the orphanage where she was raised.
Mm-hmm.
So um, well, first she returned to Mexico for study abroad. We had been back to Mexico, but she
How old is she
returned.
now?
She's 27.
She's the same age as my daughter. She's 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So,
Oh, okay. So how is she doing now?
oh, she's a uh, wonderful, competent, professional woman. She works for a local nonprofit here in the Philadelphia area.
Okay.
She's completely bilingual. I mean, getting her Spanish back. Well, first of all, let me just start by saying we try to embrace her culture as much as possible, and through Facebook and other things, and through visits, we try to encourage that she kept in communication with the people at the that she knew when she was at the orphanage,
Mm-hmm.
and for a while her Spanish completely left her, and we
Oh.
tried to encourage that she learn Spanish again, and it just wasn't the right time. But when she began high school instruction again, and then this is again, I wrote about this in my memoir, it was just kind of life affirming for her to get that back.
Oh.
And then when she returned to Mexico for study abroad, to see these folks again. So it's really important. We felt that was really important for her to do that. So it
Yeah.
was good.
How's that with you now? Because adoption is just one level of it. Now we talking about international adoption. That's a whole nother level. Because if you're one culture and you embracing another culture,
Mm-hmm,
I,
mm-hmm.
it seemed like to me that's something that they need to talk to you about and say, listen, adoption, we got you on that, but you're gonna have to, like, This Is Us, just like This Is Us. Yeah, you ever watch that show?
Yes,
And
yes.
how you have to embrace that person's culture. You have to have them around people in their culture, and so you're gonna have to do even more than the average family
Right,
who
right,
adopts, right?
right. You can't just say, you're here now. So,
Right.
no, that's where you're that's the family in quotes that they knew. So we did what we could to embrace it. It's so funny now that when we have dinners together, she's very liberal with the hot sauce and spices, but we are really not
Hmm.
like a spicy family. So she does continue to have very special a very special palate, and
Hmm.
those foods are important to her. So we try
Yeah.
to mix and match when we can. That, and there are recipes on my website that we've had success with.
Yeah, I know. I know it's, because like I said, God bless you, because just for you to do the adoption alone and then doing the international adoption, because I know how was it with your family when you decided to take that route and then you brought in a whole person that's different.
It's funny that you asked me that, because years later, I'm finding out that at the time, our family, selected people in the family, thought we were absolutely insane, but no one said it then.
Hmm.
So, but I mean, I could tell the reaction was a little bit reserved and,
Hmm.
not very,
So watching what they were
but
saying and kind of like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And they did embrace her. And then, we have a small family, so it wasn't as if there were thousands of people that had to do this. But again, years later, my sister and another cousin, and like, oh wow, we couldn't believe you were doing this. And when you don't, and even my daughter, in her moments, would yell at us, why did you adopt me if you don't even speak Spanish? I mean, as she was losing her Spanish and looking at her life in the US and another culture, there was that sorrow there. So, and that was another
Wow.
loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I know people probably was like, okay, what's going on here? Because when people don't understand, they go into this like mode of like what in the world? Why are you? It's like because they just don't get it. They don't get it. It wasn't for them to get anyway. It was for you and your husband to
Exactly. Right.
understand.
Right.
And
But they were supportive, but not, not very enthusiastic at some points. But yeah, later, again, some family and friends were just shaking their heads. We couldn't believe you did that. But
but you know what?
now,
It's a blessing because in most cases you wouldn't even known about this culture. In most cases you wouldn't even had to learn or even try to take it in. You had a
hmm
choice. You didn't have to, but now you had no choice. Really, if you were going to be a part of our lives, you had to understand because we're going to protect our child. So you're going to have to learn something.
and it's funny. Years later, the older daughter, who's our biological daughter, I said, how was, and let me just say, they're super different personalities, so they're not super tight. And
Mhm.
actually, she now lives on the West Coast. So
Mhm.
I said to her, how was it, growing up with, my someone adopted from Mexico, and she said something like, well, I'm kind of glad you did it. If you hadn't done it, Mom, it would have been a pretty boring existence. So she
Wow.
was she was glad for the. There was a high entertainment factor at times. We did have. It was because she's a funny kid. I mean, she's got a great sense of humor, and she's a she's a talker, and she's just so different from my other daughter, and the two together. It really
Oh,
was wonderful.
she was a blessing both ways. I'm
Yep,
glad. That was beautiful.
yep.
That is so beautiful. I appreciate you being on our show. This has been great for me just to be reassured on those feelings I had, being and then learning the terminology to it. It's like actually there. It's real. Because a couple of my friends I met during this journey, being adopted, we all had same kind of issues. Like we all been divorced, we all had abandonment issues, we all had
Right,
looking for someone to validate us all the time. And we was like, it got to be something because we all have the same thing. And now you gave it a
right,
terminology that we
right,
know is
right.
real.
Yes, of course. So you feel very validated when, and I know my daughter's felt validated, and through the years she's worked with therapists, and I recommend that, of course. I mean, I
Hmm.
I certainly don't have the answers, and many times I wanted to create a space for her to say things that she couldn't say to me. So
Hmm.
we had the help of some very wonderful therapists through the years.
Yes, yes. And I decided to do that too. We all, I think we all did. The people I'm talking about, we all did because we
Hmm
had to figure out what was happening here and what was going on.
Right.
And
Good for
all,
you. Good, and that takes bravery too. So good for you to face that and work on it. That's wonderful.
oh, so tell everyone before we leave, the names of your books again. How can they find them? And as you see on the bottom of the screen, ladies and gentlemen, all her information is there.
Yes.
So,
So my website, AMDDO, AMDIDIO.com, has
Mhm.
all my information, link to Amazon. And the books are Many People to Love. That's the first book.
Mhm.
And the second book is How I Wonder Where You Are. And I'm calling this the Life Adventure series. And that's Love Inspires Families Everywhere. So,
Oh, beautiful.
so I have a couple other books in my, and my contact information is on the book. If you have a story that you'd like me to know about, and maybe I could work into a children's story about adoption or foster care, share that with me. I'd love to hear from your listeners.
Oh, so you want me to talk to you about it? Because I
Yeah.
sure can.
If you,
I
yeah.
sure can.
All right. Love it.
So, but thank you so much, and I learned so
Thank
much
you.
today. And I know a lot of people, especially adoptee and adopters, both ends, learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
today from this show.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I
Oh
enjoyed
no.
it.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. So let's hold on 1 second. So let's talk 1943. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on the Business Spotlight Edition. We've been coming to you almost every Wednesday with a new business, product, or service. And we appreciate you. We want you to come back. So until next time, God bless. You have a great one.